Hey, it's Casey, and this is my second video post, so thank you for tuning in and watching. Last week I talked a little bit about different styles of yoga, and this week I kind of want to jump into a specific style, going into Vinyasa yoga. So this is a style of yoga that I teach most frequently. I really enjoy teaching Vinyasa because it is very energetic, there's a lot of flow, there's a lot of creativity behind the flows. I feel like it allows me to really express my creative juices while I'm teaching a class. But the way I teach may differ from other instructors, so the flows may tend to be a little bit different. But overall, I love the energy behind the practice. It's very heat building, a lot of strength, a lot of flexibility, balance, very well-rounded as a practice in itself. It can be very vigorous. There usually is a lot of sweat, a lot of breath. So I love that aspect of it. But more so than jumping into what Vinyasa yoga is, or what to expect at a Vinyasa yoga class, which I will touch on later so that you can kind of have a general understanding of what you're getting yourself into. This video specifically I want to gear towards what an actual Vinyasa is. So Vinyasa is a style of yoga. Yes, it is. But while you are practicing Vinyasa yoga, you may hear an instructor say, go through your Vinyasa. So there is an actual term that is a sequence of movements linked together with the breath that form a Vinyasa. So I want to break that down first. I feel like it's important to kind of go through the alignment of a Vinyasa before jumping into what to expect in a Vinyasa class. And by doing this, I'm hoping that you can better understand the alignment. So that when you go into an actual Vinyasa class or later when you go through the video that explains more about Vinyasa yoga, you'll have a better understanding of self-awareness, body awareness, and how to move mindfully through the practice. So Vinyasa actually translates into moving in a special or specific way. So it's a very, very mindful practice, very healing when done mindfully. So there's a lot of emphasis on alignment, checking your ego, and doing what feels right for you in this moment. So what felt right for you yesterday may not feel right today, and probably won't feel right tomorrow. And that's okay, because our practices are ever changing depending on how we're feeling and what our bodies are needing that day. So I'm going to go through some alignment. We're going to take our Vinyasas today. And the thing I really like about this video idea is that yes, it is for beginners to understand the basics of how to do a Vinyasa, but it's also very much a good refresher for those that have a solid practice as to remembering certain aspects of a Vinyasa so that we can keep the foundation nice and strong and keeping the integrity of our practice. So a Vinyasa, I'm going to give a quick demo first, and then I'm going to go through the breakdowns of how to do it, the alignments, modifications, and even how to intensify if that's what you're looking for, okay? So first I will go ahead and show you. And like I said before, Vinyasa is very much a heat building practice, but it's also breath linked with movement. So a lot of the things that you do, you're only in it for that one part of breath before you flow into the next. So it's that breathing into your practice, which is really, really connective, very meditative as well. And it keeps the breath strong when you're practicing mindfully. So I'm going to flow through the Vinyasa first, just so you have a basic understanding, and then we'll do the breakdown, okay? I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can for you. All right, so from what you could see, I started in plank, I lowered down, I lifted my chest, and then I took it back into downward facing dog. So that's the flow. That is a Vinyasa. Now, how to find the Vinyasa that works for us is why this video is being created. So the way I did it is there's a lot of intensity with that way. So there are ways to build yourself up to the point to be able to lower in that way with the knees up. but I'm going to go ahead and break that down for you. So starting in plank position, my shoulders stay over my wrists, and I'm finding a nice line through the body. Now, I'm not collapsing, okay, and I'm not piped up really high. I want to try to lower it down, and I'm scooping in the lower belly. I'm firming up the legs, and I'm not collapsing through my shoulders. I'm pressing actively, okay? Nice long body. Fingers are spread wide, gripping the mat through the hands. Now, if plank is too intense, lower the knees. Okay, so you can still keep active by lifting the navel and pressing through the hands. You'll start to feel a lot of intensity through the core. If you get tired through the practice from keeping the knees up, drop the knees down. Keep the integrity detached from the ego. So after you have your plank position, it's how do we go through our chaturanga. So a chaturanga is a lot like a push-up, except it's different. So in push-ups, you may notice that as we do push-ups, sometimes we flare the elbows out. Okay, so with chaturangas, it's different. As your hands are shoulder width, and as you bend the elbows, you pull the elbows in towards the sides. So notice here, they're not flared, they're pulled in and hugged tight. So this is really important. You want to keep the structure. It may feel a lot more challenging, but that's okay. We're training our bodies to do things in a way that's serving them. Okay, so mindful movement. So the elbows hug in nice and tight. Now, there's a really important factor. There's quite a few actually, and I'll touch on all of them. But the first one I'm going to go through is the rocking forward. So I'm going to start on the toes. So I'm going to give the cue, rock forward over the wrists. And I'm going to press forward. Now notice that my shoulders come over my wrists there. Okay. Now, as I rock forward, I bend the elbows and I hug them in towards my ribs, nice and tight. Now notice my elbows are right over my wrists here, okay? Now, I want to show you what that would look like if I had it rocked forward first, okay? So, plank position. If I don't rock forward first, and I just bend my elbows, notice that they start pointing back instead of here, okay? They're pointing back. So from there, you've lost the integrity of the pose. You want to keep the stack, so that 90-degree bend is what you're looking for. So you're going to feel more structure, more foundation, and you're helping to really strengthen in through the shoulder girdle, strengthening in through the core, rather than dumping weight into the elbows, into the shoulders. Really important. And you can do that on your knees as well. So same thing. When you're on your knees, you rock forward, and then you lower. Elbows over wrists. Not here, okay? Forward. Now, once you've lowered down, elbows stay in tight. Another key thing to remember is the shoulder blades. You never want the shoulder blades to point down. You always want to keep the spine lengthening forward, chest forward, and the shoulder blades point forward. So you keep a long straight line through the body. And I'll demo that for you right now too. So, plank position. Shift forward, lower, elbows over wrists, 90-degree bend, elbows in, shoulders forward, instead of here. Point forward, not here, okay? So you can do that on your knees as well. So from here, shift forward, lower, and that's your chaturanga. Shoulders forward, not here. Okay, so if lowering halfway, which is the chaturanga position, still feels too intense, that's okay. Sometimes what I start to see is people collapsing through their hips and through their bellies. And over time, that's going to create a lot of strain into the lower back. So what you can do is lower slowly all the way to the floor, getting the body to touch down at one time, rather than collapsing or rolling the body. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So collapsing, as you're trying to lower, might look a little something like this. So you're pressing, and you're lowering, but you don't really feel it, and then you start to roll down. Okay, I see that so often in my classes. Now, I'm going to give you a cue to drop the knees if I see that happening. Okay, so keeps the core strong. But what you can do is lower down all the way to the ground. So I'm going to start in tabletop this time. Okay, so with the knees down, you shift forward and you lower. Now, if it still feels intense to stop here, you can keep lowering and the whole body comes down at one time. Okay, now I'll show you that same thing with the knees lifted onto the toes. So, plank position. I shift forward. I lower halfway. Still too much. I come all the way Take any of those variations. It doesn't matter if you lower just half or all the way. Do what feels good for you, but keep the core strong. Keep the body lowering as one solid unit, and don't dump your weight. Okay, mindful movement. At first, it might be like, wow, there's all these things to remember. The more you practice going through these steps, the easier it becomes for your practice just to kind of come into those spaces through muscle memory. So keep practicing. It does become easier. Not only does it become easier mentally, but physically your body starts to strengthen and understanding the movements so that you can start adding on from there. So we started in plank, and then we lowered through our chaturanga. Okay, so from chaturanga, whether you've lowered half the way or all the way down, we go into upward facing dog, cobra, or baby cobra. Okay, so there's 3 different options you can take, and I'll go through those here. Okay, so I'm going to say you lower all the way down. Okay, flip to the tops of your feet, activate your legs. Baby cobra is just lifting the chest barely. Sometimes you can even float the hands, and you're using mostly just the back muscles here. Okay, or you can gently press and lift yourself a little higher. Maybe you just kind of feel it out. Maybe this is as high as you want to lift and it feels good right here. Good. Stay right there. Okay? Release the shoulder blades down the back, ribs forward, heart up. And then you lower down. Okay? So that's baby cobra. Full cobra is pressing to the hands and extending out through the arms. Okay? You don't have to have straight arms to feel the pose, only if it feels good for your body. Otherwise, keep the bent elbows. If arms do extend, once again, spread through the chest, relax the shoulder blades down the back, ribs forward, heart up. Activate your legs, feel open, feel engaged. Okay, so this is cobra pose. Now, upward facing dog isn't much different. So with cobra, notice that my thighs are down, my hips are down, my knees are down. Okay, so coming into upward facing dog, I really activate by pressing into the tops of the feet. Okay, and then as I press to the tops of the feet, I lift, and I'm pressing through the floor, shoulders down the back, ribs forward, heart up. But notice that my knees are up, my thighs are up, my hips are up, my legs are strong and active. This is upward facing dog. It is not necessary to take this pose if it doesn't feel good. Me personally, I love cobra pose. I could stay here all the time, and I feel like I get more opening this way. Okay? If you like upward facing dog, feel free to take it. Okay? These are just options. Feel for the one that works for you. So those are your options: baby cobra, full cobra, or upward facing dog. Okay, and you take that on the inhale as you're opening the heart, and then we come into downward facing dog. So from here, downward facing dog, first option, come back onto the knees first, tuck the toes, and just pull the hips back. Okay, I'll go through the alignment of downward dog after I get into the flows of how to get there. Okay, so that's the first one, coming onto the knees first. Otherwise, maybe you're here, and it's going to be a lot of core if you want to take it in other variations. So from here, full breath in, and on your exhale, you pull back through the navel and the hips. You lift up and flip to the tops of your feet. Okay, this one, good variation to come into. Maybe it feels good when you're here to flip your feet first and then lift up. Okay, if that feels better, you can take that option as well. Now the other option, more advanced option if it feels good. Let's say you're in cobra or upward facing dog, either way. You stay on the tops of the feet, you keep pressing, you pull back through the hips and roll over the toes. Okay, and then maybe you walk the feet in slightly. So those are your variations for getting back into downward dog. Now some things I notice in downward facing dog is the rounding of the back. Okay, we may feel like, oh, my hamstrings are really tight, or my shoulders are really tight here. Okay, bend your knees instead, and then press your hips back. So notice that my chest drops enough to get a nice long spine, and I'm pressing my spine up to my hips. Then you can work on extending your legs. Your legs do not have to extend in this pose unless it feels good for you. Okay. Now another thing is the heels. Sometimes we think that the heels have to be all the way to the mat. Not true. Okay? Maybe your heels always stay lifted, and that's okay, but you're working on melting the heels towards the ground just as much as you can. You'll feel a deep stretch into the hamstrings, into the calves, and Achilles. So things to avoid: dumping through the shoulders or bending the elbows. Keep the arms straight. Spine is long all the way to the hips. If you need to bend the knees, you can keep a bend into the knees the whole entire time. Also, avoid melting the chest, okay? This is not a chest and shoulder opener unless you're taking it to that stretch, but you want a long spine. Draw the navel in, hips up and back, okay? So remember that. Now I'm going to show you something from a front view that I feel like you can't get from side view. Okay, and hopefully you can get it here. Now, a lot of times I see this pinching through the shoulders. We're dumping here. You want to press and roll the shoulders out. So notice this external rotation. This external rotation is where you're trying to get your armpits to face one another. Fingers spread wide, gripping the mat, and I'm pressing. Okay? You want to keep that integrity through the shoulders. Nice and strong, keeping them down the back, not pinched up towards the ears. So I hope that those cues are helpful for you. I'm going to flow through that vinyasa once again, but I'm going to talk about the breath as I'm going through, just kind of how to link the breath with the movement in itself. Okay, and I'm going to take a couple options, a couple variations of options that you can take. So plank, you're going to shift forward, exhale, inhale, exhale. Okay, there's one. Let's take the modified version. Breath. Shift forward. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, if you want to intensify, feel free to add a chaturanga push-up in there, okay? You can do that on your knees or on your toes, okay? So that's shifting forward, lowering half, pressing back up, and then lowering and lifting, okay? Once again, you can do that on the knees, same way, and taking it back. Also going through your vinyasa, you may feel like you want to add intensity by floating a leg. You can do that as well, just make sure you keep the balance for both sides. Shifting, lowering, inhale, and exhale. All right, well, I think I went through the general flow of how to do a vinyasa with all the modifications and variations that you can take to intensify or to help build strength into the poses, working your way up to something specific. A lot of strengthening into the shoulders, a lot of strengthening into the core, overall a lot of body awareness, mindful movement, detachment from the ego, and learning how to activate, how to engage. So all these things are really important. Once we have the full alignment and full awareness in the practice, we can really start to feel the practice serve our bodies, serve our minds. There's so many aspects that can benefit from mindful movement. As you can see, I'm out of breath, and practicing those even a few times, you'll start to feel the heat intensify. You can even hold the poses for a little bit longer and really start to build that internal heat. So try it out, have some fun with it. I hope that you gained a lot from this video. These are things that have helped me tremendously in my practice, and they're things that I really try to teach in my classes. I don't always have an opportunity to break them down quite like I did today, so I hope that you can benefit from its information, whether you're brand new or you've been practicing for a while. This is something that can help to build strength in any foundation for a vinyasa practice. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. Shoot them my way. I'd be more than happy to help you out. And thank you for watching. Namaste.